Okay, well, Kent, great to meet you virtually after we've corresponded a bit. I don't know a lot about you, I know little, so maybe you can start by saying, well, how did you get involved with Russia? Did you have a previous interest in it, or how did that work?
Okay, sure. Yeah. I'm an engineer architect by training, and I worked in the defense industry for 5 years. And then I decided to get an MBA to really broaden my possibilities, which it obviously did. And I got an MBA from Wharton, and after a
And
few,
what year was that? And what year was that?
that was 1993 when I graduated from there. So I graduated college in '86, five
Yeah.
years defense industry. Um, and then, no, I didn't. I can't say the Cold War had been going on. I was kind of grew up in that as well, so I was always interested. But it kind of fell in my lap that this role, helping to sort of start up a consulting arm of a company in Canada, a big metals mining and engineering company, to get involved with that. That was coincidentally focusing on Russia, at least a lot. We did some Australian work. So I just kind of fell into it, and
Yeah. Is that was your first position after Wharton?
no, I worked for a business aircraft aviation company, some different things, and then I consulted here in Kansas City for a while in sheet metal stamping and sort of heavy industry, which is what made me appeal a little bit to the Canadian company. You know, engineering background, but then operations and finance and all these other things from grad school that they were like, oh, great combination for what we're doing here.
Right. And so did you reach out to them or did they reach out to you?
I maybe a headhunter found them and married us up. They're based in Mississauga, and went up there and talked to them a few times, and it's pretty exciting what was going on at the time with the interest in westernizing the steel mills in Russia and things like that. So I was all really interested in joining the firm.
Yeah. What was the name of the company?
Hatch, it's Hatch Associates, Hatch Mott McDonald, based in Mississauga. Big engineering, mining, tunnels, bridges, everything like that. But they were so they actually I wouldn't say merged because they were huge. They brought in a little group from England called Beddoes and Company, and they were a little consulting group in steel and metals. And they wanted to be I think it's kind of funny looking back, but they wanted to be the McKinsey and Company of this world, right? Because there weren't strategy and consulting for what they were trying to pull off here in westernizing steel mills in Russia. So we were gonna be the McKinsey and Company of that world. Kind of a grandiose plan, but we started down that path.
Right, right. So they had this contract before you joined them?
It did.
Yeah. Okay. And who'd they have the contract with?
Well, there was two different projects that I was involved in. One was in Magnitogorsk, and the contract was with the EBRD, and I think it was like a pre-export financing facility that Magnitogorsk was wanting. So the EBRD, of course, was like, okay, well, is there facility capable of even doing this? Are we throwing good money after bad? That sort of thing. So it's kind of a whole. Tell us about this place. Is this a big risk for us? So we had people evaluating the technologies that they were using, the quality, how well maintained were their rolling mills, their steel mills, their furnaces, et cetera. So like any bank would do, who are we loaning money to, and is this a risky endeavor or not?
Yeah. And what year did you start on that?
Late '98. I think this all
Okay.
happened to me late '98 through some part of 2000.
Okay. So Magnitogorsk was trying to get financing from the EBRD to modernize or to export, or what were they trying to do?
I think they were trying to get out of the barter world that they were in. They sort of
Uh-huh.
needed cash flow, and so they were trying to get out of that. And so it was, as opposed to the next role, which we'll talk about in a minute, at Chelyabinsk. for Metchel was more they wanted money for upgrading their equipment.
Uh-huh.
So, but the kinds of things that I was doing there were kind of similar across both, and sometimes I get confused which place I was at with certain memories, right? Because they
Right,
kind of
right,
ran together. But
right. So what did you do? And when did you go to Russia the first time? Tell me about that, what your impressions were, what you did.
yeah, so it was so interesting. I'm adventuresome by nature, so everything was like, bring it on. Everything that happened, could not have imagined it. So I remember flying into Sheremetyevo airport in Moscow. And I think we spent a couple nights there for meetings or whatever, and then I think it's Domodedovo Airport, another airport you fly out of.
Right, Domodedovo. Yep,
Yeah, been a while. I should look this stuff up, but
that's okay.
and then I remember like just the airplane itself, like the pitch of the seating, like half of the plane. First of all, there's only about 12 of us on the plane. It was probably like 737 size plane, right? All the seats were like pushed together so far that you couldn't even sit in the first half of the plane. It was like there wasn't even room for feet. It was odd. And of course, a couple stewardesses, flight attendants coming with, some hard candies and stuff, making it was very different than flying, in the States. And then I remember when we landed in the middle of the winter at an airport, it was very dark. There wasn't a lot of lights at the airport. And then I remember looking out the window and our bags were being pulled out and put in a big pile, stacked up. And they had German Shepherds walking over the luggage for drugs or whatever, right? It was just, and then I think even before we flew, maybe when we flew out of there, you stood on a scale, you got weighed, so it was very sort of 1940s here airline industry kind of thing. So everything that happened was so different from anything I'd experienced before.
Yeah. And so did they have people meet you there at the airport?
They did. They'd have like a shuttle van, and then there was always, pretty good little ride into town. And I'm always looking. Like I remember, I think this is Magnitogorsk. I also see a tram. Okay, so I'm kind of paying attention. Like, okay, the tram's going up over there. We're going over here to the hotel. So I know the city's over that way. So if I see a tram stop, I want to go left. That's going to take me
Uh-huh.
because I can't read any of the Cyrillic, any of the Russian, right? So just
Right.
kind of planning ahead, trying to get my bearings about the place because I knew I wanted to explore as much as I could.
Right. So this was the city of Magnitogorsk.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so your company sent you there with no translator, just put you on a plane?
Well, always at the start of these projects, there'd be an entourage of us, probably like 6 or 7 people. The guys running the consulting arm from England, the Beddoes fellows would be there. They did all the talking, and I was a minion that was doing the work, right?
Right.
So they'd come in for a few days and have their meetings and talks, and they'd bolt out of there. And me and maybe somebody else sometimes would be there, like trying to knock off these projects. They would bring in people with the steel expertise and things like that. I tended to be there the whole time. Those people would tend to come in and go back out. My projects seemed to be like longer term, or I might be like picking up loose ends from their projects. Like they didn't get it all figured out. So, hey, go to the EAF and ask these questions from the manager, that kind of thing. So I was kind of the long-term eyes and ears for our company there.
Yeah. So they installed you there in Magnitogorsk and as the permanent kind of representative of the project.
Yeah. I don't think it was stated that way. It just sort of turned out to be that way. I would be there 2 or 3 weeks, and no one else was ever there for a long period of time. And then I'd come back for a couple, just for a break, I guess. And then I'd go back for a couple, and that went on. There might be a longer break for a month or two sometimes, but for that kind of 1.5 to 2 year period, I was in and out quite a bit.
Okay.
Facilities.
And where are you going? You were flying out of the country then? Are you flying
Yeah,
back to
all the way
Moscow?
back.
Oh,
Yeah.
you all flew back. Okay. And so while you were there for these 2 or 3 week stints, you were there. Did I assume that somebody provided you a translator so you could do your work?
Yeah,
Um,
back to your
yeah,
original question. Yeah, so they, I don't remember it so much at Magnitogorsk as I do at Chelyabinsk because I developed, I think the project was longer, more of a relationship with the translation department. Like I think when
yeah,
we talk, it's like the in the olden days the stenographer group, right? Where
right.
if I needed a driver or an interpreter or whatever, they would provide me one. So anytime I had a meeting with someone, yes, I always had an interpreter there with me that would sort of obviously do the questions back and forth, and then afterwards we would debrief, and she would help fill in all my holes that I had. Very helpful. Yeah, have done anything without their help.
Yeah, yeah. So say in both places they had a translation bureau.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And so where were you staying in Magnitogorsk? In a hotel?
Yeah. A hotel, but these hotels were ad hoc things that well, they didn't exist as hotels before. I know they didn't because no one was coming in and out that much for this commercial sort of activity, right? So they were
Right,
the, I guess I call them like the Khrushchev era apartment block buildings that you see all over Eastern Europe, right? With the little
right.
balconies and stuff. But I always have a hard time explaining this to people in the West because they always sort of think you're exaggerating. But no, like in this place, the front door was just an opening, and there was a doorman who sat in a little dark opening there too, with a little desk. And there was an elevator that I equate to sort of almost like a grain elevator, like four people could get in. That was very rickety and whatever. And you'd go up to the eighth floor or whatever, and then you have a room that had, a cot, not like a single bed, but low, like we would call it a cot almost,
Right.
um, and opening with the door, but a restroom, a toilet, and usually a kitchen or something, but in a fridge, but you didn't have any use for that, and maybe a TV, and there was only anything broadcasting in English. Maybe I watched Deutsche Welle and maybe France 24, but mostly, and it wasn't on. There wasn't anything on a lot of the time you were there either. At night when I'd be there, like, there's nothing on the TV.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very
And
austere, put that way.
yeah. And where did you eat?
Well, they invariably had a woman on the floor who was the restaurant. So it's an older woman. I think she probably lived there, and she just had a few tables, and you would just come down there at certain times, or she'd make you breakfast or lunch or dinner or whatever. But it was just an old woman who was just cooking for the guests.
Oh, okay, okay. So it was like a guest house or something? Is that what it was?
We're in a huge apartment building, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
just one part
yeah.
of the rest of it was people living there. It was
I
just
see. I
they just took
see.
over part of this floor for this sort of thing. Yeah, it
Oh,
was
oh,
not built purpose built for this at all.
I see. I see. And so there were they weren't very used to interacting with foreigners then in
Oh
this, right?
no,
No.
yeah. Like I mean, I'm sure that had been around. This was like '98, so I'm sure this had been going on since '92 or '3, right?
Right, right.
Brand new at it, but they hadn't built up a lot of infrastructure around the sort of working with the business people from the West yet at a city like Magnitogorsk.
Right, right. So can you talk a little bit about what were you trying to accomplish? What kind of information were you trying to get from them, and what were you trying to accomplish in these visits?
Okay. Well, I think because of my business school background, they invariably had me focusing at least 70% on the numbers, right? Trying to bring some transparency to the numbers that they were producing. Like, is this all, hocus pocus? Like, what are they really making here? What's it cost them, et cetera? So
Uh-huh.
a lot of detective work trying to create a income statement, cash flow statement, those kind of things that we would have in the West from their numbers, and they don't do it that way at all, right? So
Right, right. So you were taking they were using the Russian accounting system, which inherited from the Soviets, right?
Right.
And you were translating that into Western accounting?
Yeah, at least part of it. And then the next level down was, um, are these numbers real?
Uh-huh.
Right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, how'd you figure that out, whether they were real or not?
Well, I'm not sure I did, except for the fact that I know they aren't real. Like, you push hard enough, you find out that they're not real. And so there were situations where, um, like, just to say, following, like, so when I say like the financial statements, there was that part, but there's also just sort of like operational, like, where does the steel flow? So the tonnage, how does it flow through? Where's it all going? Is this getting sold off on the black market too? Are we
Mhm.
funding that as well? And they know that's going on, so they just want to sort of figure out how much and that sort of thing. So um, I just remember one time where I was like doing the numbers with the tonnages, and you've got scrap and fallout all along the way, and but then the numbers weren't making sense at all, and I'm asking like, well, yeah, but what about this remelt here? No, no, no. Oh, you don't understand. Well, wait a minute. But I don't see how. And then they would get upset. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no more questions. I'm like, okay, I got it. If you push too hard, you were never, you were never going to feel like you got. I mean, what am I going to do? I'm not an interrogator. I'm not a prosecutor. It's not a court of law. Like, all I can do is
Yeah.
try what I can find out and say, hey, some stuff going on here. Don't know what it
Yeah.
is. Pretty sure that that's going elsewhere. And in fact, it wasn't all that unusual for them to talk about the fact that all the steel that they made didn't get sold, like openly. Like, I went to the general director took me to a hockey match there, the Magnitogorsk Tractors, and very austere but very steel building, like steel girders everywhere, right? And and they love their hockey, of course. And he's really proud of the place. And he's like, "Look, see this? Do you see this here? Yeah, it's wonderful." He goes, "No, you don't. This does not exist. You do not see this." I'm like, "What do you mean? It does not exist." So I didn't understand what he was talking about. And finally, through the interpreter, I got that he's saying, "We built all this with steel that we just did on the side. We made this,
Uh-huh.
built this hockey rink and arena off the books. This is off book sort of thing that we did." So it wasn't like they hid that from me. He was bragging about it.
Uh-huh. 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 Huh. Well, wow. How did you how did they take your questioning? I mean, you've already said at some points they kind of were okay, no more, but did they see you as a spy for somebody else, or how did they kind of react to you?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't think the people that hired me knew it worked out this way, but I will say I was the right guy for that job because I was very genuine. So they liked me is where I'm going. Like, the people, you could tell I was not like, not on their side. I was just trying to do a job and be real. And so I got way more information, I think, than I would have otherwise if I'd have been like some of my compatriots who were very sort of not friendly, not open. Um, I mean, the Russians, they were on their heels back then too, right? They were like, we used to be a great, great big power, and now we're like this. So they had little insecurities going on as well, right? And so I just sort of became, we'll say, friends with these people, the business people, the steel people, just by being real and hanging out with them. And so um, they probably took me. They're probably very suspicious of me at first, and I think they figured out, hey, this guy's just out here, asking the questions he needs to ask, and we'll help him as much as we can. I think
Mm-hmm.
I got more
Uh-huh.
help than I could have otherwise.
Right, right, right. Well, so they did understand that by helping you, they were helping themselves to get this financing, right? Is that
Exactly. They
yeah?
needed me to give a good report in some way, right? So
Yes.
it wasn't like they were a company that was being bought and they were going to go away. Like, they needed our help. That's why I was involved. Exactly. I mean, that's so we just kind of had to bridge that, and yeah, that was the dynamic of it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So you spent time with them and with some of them outside of work as well. Is that right?
A few outside of work, but mostly it was like during work. Like, I'm a big Beatles fan, and Russians are huge Beatles fans. I mean,
Yeah,
it was a big thing to get a Beatles thing underground back in the day, and so just some people just clicked with because you had the same interest, and the people in the offices, they're better educated than we are. First, technically, they're brilliant, and they know English pretty well, right? So I could converse with them fairly well. I always had an interpreter there to help, but you could still talk about stuff. You could shoot the breeze a little bit about things, so which you couldn't do with an interpreter very well. So you could kind of hang out. So I got to like these people. I think they got to like me, and that just greased the wheels for everything I was doing.
yeah,
That said, I mean, I guess it's related to that, but there's a memory I have of, and maybe it goes back to the trying to understand their numbers and put them in a sense of what we know in our accounting and those kind of things. But um, I was tasked with naively by my boss to go, very simple to do, go find out how they manage their operations. Okay. Like the production operations, right? What numbers leap. So I went general director, and here he sees this punk kid from America, and this guy's brilliant and also powerful and knows, great politician, all that stuff, right? And he's like, and they have so much fun with me, poking fun, like, oh, you like to know that? Yes. Come back tomorrow. I'll show you. Okay. Hustle you out. You go do something else. Come back the next day. And I remember he had a big long room, of course, tall ceilings, long table, like conference room table, his desk at the end. And it was piled high with big papers, handwritten pencil, stacks everywhere. He's like, there, that's how we do it. Have at it. It's yours. And he left. He's like, okay, it's all right there.
and all written in Russian in cursive as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. On
yeah,
old big leaf type paper, the sort of brownish paper, right? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I was like, okay. He just had me. I didn't even attempt to do anything. I just go, got it. Went back. We need a different approach. That's not going to get me anywhere.
Right, right. Were you able actually to get an approach that worked with them?
I mean, remembering back, I mean, I ultimately did put numbers together, so I did, and I got down to details. I'll call it a detail. It's really not, but like things like concepts like um, depreciation and amortization.
Yeah, didn't have those.
They're like, "What are you talking about? You got fake money in here that you're counting against, but no, we did better than that. No, but we have to account for this too because you got to rebuild this machine one day. No, we get a new machine one day. It was like the concept they couldn't get, and I knew they were brilliant people, but there was just this. They hadn't looked at the world that way ever before, so now we look at it this way, and that just went like this forever. I don't remember how we resolved that, but
Yeah,
it does tell me that I was getting into the details of a Western, income statement, et cetera. So,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Well, do you think that by the time you left, they were even any more comfortable with those concepts or not?
yeah, I do, and I had some help too. So, Magnitogorsk. So the EBRD had a brilliant younger guy, Lou Namovsky. You should talk to him sometime. He was Canadian, but born in Eastern Europe. I forget which country. Lou Namovsky, and he was sort of the in-between handler. He was. They had hired us to help them figure out if they should loan this money, and of course he knew Russian inside out, and he'd worked there before for I think American Express or somebody. But he was a brilliant guy, great personality, just a perfect guy for that role. And so he would help those things too, right? We may have a
Mhm.
double team meeting with somebody where he can do the interpreting and translating back and forth as we work through stuff because he knew obviously Western ways of doing things and our business statements and things like that. So it wasn't
Right.
just me on my own. at the Magnitogorsk jobs for sure.
Yeah. So what was did you get onto the factory floor? Did you see the plant?
I did, yeah,
Yeah.
because
What was your impression of it?
well, first of all, to be fair, I trying to think if I'd even been in a Western steel mill,
Okay. Right.
and I'm not sure I had, but I do remember like walking around an EAF, and there was just one little sort of flimsy railing or something. Like we would never get that close to one in the US. You're standing right there with your interpreter. She's wearing open-toed shoes in a skirt, and outside like a open hearth furnace or a blast furnace probably, and there's shooting oxygen in there and sparks are flying out everywhere, and there's people just standing right there. Where since then I've seen, we got a guy in a hazmat suit. You're not getting anywhere close to that. Totally different
Yeah.
there. Totally comfortable with the dangers of the steel mill. Way more
Yeah.
than we had back here. There was no
Yeah.
OSHA, I guess is a way to say it, right?
Right. 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 So that was pretty obvious to you as a impression then.
It
Yeah.
was. And the rolling mills, it was all, yeah. I think I told you this before, and you know this. The Russians, out of necessity, I guess, are just brilliant at making do with what they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So things cobbled together and still working really well. It's like, wow, this rolling mill, you could tell they couldn't redo that. So they were kludging something together to make that thing work for a while or whatever. You could just look at it and go, wow, okay. Looks a little
Yeah.
iffy.
Yeah. 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 So how often were you in in the plant itself?
I would say like 20% of my time, maybe.
Oh, okay. A fair amount of time then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there'd be, tracking someone down or getting some sort of technical information that the people back in Canada were asking for again. They hadn't thought. So I'd go out there and not necessarily observing it so much, but meeting with somebody out there. So you're walking through the facilities while ladles are going overhead and things like that.
Right. So there were other people who were evaluating the technology of their production, and you were evaluating the finances or
Right.
preparing a report.
Right. And maybe the operations at a next level up. So my master's was in operations and technology management. So
Oh, okay.
bridging between the two, right? So
Yeah.
painting a picture with numbers as well, but still there's a flow to things, and sometimes though I was just following up on technical things because I'm an engineer too. I could do that, right? Like I understand metallurgy and that sort of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
So
not a student.
what was your impression of them as managers, as the management team that you encountered?
My impression, let me think about that. They were all very, very good at what they were doing. Like in the command economy, I guarantee they nailed it. Like if
Mhm.
whatever their job was, they were going to be really good at it. Whereas I wouldn't say that I've worked in many companies in this country and not really impressed with a lot of people that are maybe risen to here and here. Like, how'd you get there? But there, I was like, these people. Now, maybe I had a disadvantage because I don't know the language or whatever, and I can be more fooled. I don't know them well enough. It wasn't enough time. But I always felt like they were all really, really technically savvy and just sort of politically savvy and good managers, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That
Uh-huh.
said, the other thing that was different that I noticed was there was never a lot going on. Now, it's like people sitting around on piles of stuff, like not working. There,
Uh-huh.
there was just a lot of slowness, it felt like, right? Now, when things were happening, things were happening. If a rolling mill is running, it's happening, right? But it
Right.
just seemed like the in between times were large, compared
Uh-huh.
to what I would have expected over here.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And did that did that impact your sense of the efficiency of this place? That it wasn't that efficient because people were not working in the same pace or tempo?
Yeah, I mean, I just took that as well. This is the command economy, and they explained it to me. They said, all we have to do is hit that quota that we have to hit.
Right.
How long it took wasn't really as important. We just had to get that number, and then if we did past that, we build a hockey rink or whatever. It was all
Right.
about.
Right. Right. And again, you were there in what year was this?
End of '98 is when I first.
End of 98. So this is already 8 years into the market economy. And their culture, their industrial culture was still Soviet, still command economy culture in terms of business customs and accounting, style of work, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I have to say it's. I'm sure it was way different if I'd been there 9 years earlier, but the
Yeah.
vestiges of it were still there for
Right.
sure.
Right.
You could throw as many people as you wanted at something because the labor cost was nothing, right?
Uh-huh. 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 Yeah.
Throw a million people at it. We're over here, you can't do that.
Right. 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 And how did you you didn't like study how management was done in Soviet times or whatever. You just really got a sense of from what people told you, this is how we do it, kind of. Yeah. Yeah.
I totally green, and I don't even think there was like, there was no internet, so it wasn't like I could be online Googling and researching stuff, right? I just
Right.
had to
Right.
learn what I could as fast as I could and any way I could.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and what was the length of time you were working in Magnitogorsk on this contract?
Yeah, I'm gonna get this wrong, but I would say like that was like 3/4 of a year because I feel like I spent
Yeah.
more of my time at Metro Steel in Chelyabinsk.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, well, we'll get to that one in a minute. But so you, in the end, produced a report, which then went to the EBRD. Did they loan money to Magnitogorsk?
I I don't know. Before we got on today, I was sort of doing some Googling and I found that document. I hadn't read it yet. Like it was the pre-export document from back then, and I feel like they did get their money, but I don't really know that. I can't confidently
Oh,
say
okay.
they did. Um,
Oh, okay.
you find out
Oh,
I'm still in contact, yearly with Lou Navosky, who's up in Canada back again. So anyway, I'm
yeah.
curious too. Like, how did that play? How did that pan out?
Right. Right. So, did you? So you were, you had a regular work day, but you were there in 2 or 3 week stints. Did you get out into the city at all?
I did. And again, my memories of which city these were sometimes gets conflated. Um,
Yeah.
to me, they look very similar.
Yeah.
Um, but I did. So and that's where I sort of did things that other people weren't doing. Like I would, I had I was told, well, you have a driver anytime you need a driver. Well, no one else when they were there ever used a driver to go anywhere unless it was a business function that they took us all to in a van or something, right? They didn't
Yeah.
do
Right.
anything. I'm like, oh, I have a driver? Give me a driver, take me into town, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and they would take you to like turned out to be a restaurant down beneath the street, like a door, nondescript door. It didn't say restaurant on it. But it was there. And I'd go down there, and this is like one of many examples where there would be no one there. Like there was never anyone in these things. I'm like, I don't even get how they exist. But I was there with a compatriot one time and a colleague, sorry, and we're at one. There was a Russian, obviously mafia guy in there, and later we found out it was probably his restaurant, and he was upset and he broke some plates, and we were like, oh my god, we were like scared. We're like, what have we gotten ourselves into?
Right.
You
Right.
know, somehow, he didn't really, we thought he was going to engage us. He didn't. We were so thankful. And then we sort of got out of there. But that was just one of many experiences of going out and how different it was from any even European country that I'd been to before.
Right. So you didn't get in a situation where the people would say, "Oh, I want to talk to you because you're an American. I've never met an American before." That kind of thing was there because you're out in the provinces. I don't know how many foreigners were there. I don't know. Were there others that you saw around?
No, there was no there weren't. I can confidently say that when I was in those cities, we were the only Westerners there. Because there'd be no reason for anyone else to be there. You could. It's not like a
Right.
tourist would go there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were experiences where I was definitely I was an outlier, right? I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Like I was crossing the street in Chelyabinsk one time, pretty busy street, kind of downtown, and I hear an older gentleman, McKinsey, because no matter what you dress like, you stuck out. You they
Right.
just
Right. Yeah.
Metakinsky, and he was pretty far away, and he comes running up to me. He's like, "Oh," I'm like, "Yeah." We're trying to chat. He had limited English. Come with me. Family apartment. Da, da. Okay. I mean, it was a weekend. I was like, I'm just exploring, right? And so he took me to his apartment with his family, like his mother, his wife, his kids, and the little couch with the textile on it, and they're like, "Oh my God!" It was like a party now. They pulled out. He's telling his wife, "Go get the whatever," and she pulls out some old port wine or something for special occasions, and they pull out cucumbers and um, tomatoes and some pork, and all of a sudden we're having a little meal, and it was like turned into a little. The guy, he hit a home run. He was probably like, "If I ever see an American, I'm bringing him home." And
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that stuff. The kids were all like, "Oh wow," like you're from outer space.
Right. Right. Did any of them speak any English?
um, in that situation, no. But in another memory, I was there were some college kids. The college kids could all speak pretty good English. Like
Uh-huh.
these kids, I mean, not all of them, but you could definitely have a conversation with them. And there was some kid he started his own beer company back then, and he had a tent, and it was Christ was the name of the beer. And my son's name is Christopher, spelled the same way and stuff. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. And plus, it was unusual. Here was a little somebody making some money here out under a tent, and they had some tables set out and a bunch of college kids, and they saw me, and they pulled into their world, and they're all chatting me up, and the girls were beautiful, of course. I mean, I fell in love with Eastern European women, and yeah, so I was definitely like, wow, where did this guy come from? They'd pull me in, and for hours, you'd sit there and talk with them about everything.
Uh-huh. And that was in Chelyabinsk, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, so, um, so was there anything close to being a tourist attraction in Magnitogorsk?
No, no,
No.
no. I
War
mean,
memorials, anything?
oh, I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure there was for Russians, that sort of
Yeah,
thing. Like they had that tractor, which was a tank plant. I was told later, it's not necessarily tractors; it's tanks too, is what it originally was. Maybe it's
yeah,
still. So you might see a tank in what was like a little park or something, right? Oh, it's like we would
right.
have an old war jet in a park somewhere, like that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't remember like the interpreters ever going, "Oh, can't you've got to go check out the whatever thing because everyone that comes here, this stuff was probably there," but I don't remember that so much.
Yeah, okay. Did he get you out in the forest and nature outside the city at all?
No, I've never got to do that. You know,
Okay.
nope. And,
Okay.
and I was there summer and winter too, and it's like Kansas. You got tons of snow, then you got warm summers too. So you got the four seasons. So I got to see it in all its different iterations.
Right, right. Okay. Well, so you weren't really. I'm still on Magnitogorsk. Well, we'll get to Chelyabinsk in a minute. But you weren't there to really change the way they do business or to change the way they did accounting. You were just trying to gather information, right?
Yeah, trying to
Oh,
help
okay.
the ERD be confident in their loan, and I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay. Okay.
across.
Do you think that any of that interaction with you and your colleagues in the EBRD changed anything in terms of how they saw the world or did things, or what did they learn from you in any sense? Do you know?
I don't know, but I say it has to work that way. I think everything gets chipped away at a little bit, right? Just sort
Yeah,
of exposure over time. And this was intentional exposure about trying to bring these two worlds together because we're going to give you some money. And that's a new thing for us. I mean, EBRD is what they do, right? But
right.
we make sure that we're not wasting our money on a failed situation here. So, but we're
Yeah,
rooting for you. We're rooting for you, but
yeah,
you got to make sure this makes sense.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think it gets
yeah.
chipped away at over time by these activities that happen, year after year. Like I'm sure
Right.
it's, up until Putin sort of changed things, it was probably that much better that many years later too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. And so I have to ask you this just because I know for some of these guys, these what people refer to as the red directors, they were the guys who were inherited the factory as factory managers from, had been there all in continuity from Soviet times. Um, so there's vodka sometimes played a role in how they got to know you. In other words, in whether they trusted you or not. Is that did that? I mean, but I know that as the '90s went on, that became less and less true. People were more businesslike. They couldn't afford to ruin their health or the next day by drinking. So where were you on that spectrum? Did that play any role in your relationship with the people there?
That did. And just an aside, I've done work in Korea since then, and there's very much that sort of thing still, right? Um,
Yeah,
and with soju, which is basically vodka. But yeah, now at my level, I had less opportunity for that than say our director, who should have been out having dinner with these people. I remember though a couple situations where we were celebrating something, and so we're having a dinner. They're putting a dinner on with us, and so we're in a room with 30 people around a table. I just have a great memory of this, um, and the vodka shots are happening, toasts, and the other thing is these people could give a toast like nobody's business. We don't know how to do
yeah,
that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
The guy would stand up, the general director, and they would all go around. Everybody's giving a toast, and it's like, wow, I have to give one. Oh, this is getting fail. But you got like 10 shots of vodka in you by the time it comes around to you. So they are getting you liquored up so you can talk too freely, etc., and sort of get to know each other. And definitely that was going on. I just had limited opportunities where that was happening. And I just have a memory about this particular situation where not only were we not good at it, but we also had some people that, at the levels above me that should have known better, but didn't. Like I remember this man who was a brilliant metallurgist for our company, who was sort of leading that part. And he gave a toast and he said something alluding to um, the Cold War, like, well, we used to not like each other or something, and it was just very crude and poorly done and stupid subject or whatever. Everyone was sort of like, "Well, okay, that's just toast." I remember afterwards, Lou from the EBRD goes, "Hey, Kent, I gotta tell you, he goes, you need to talk to Jerry. That did not go over well.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?" Like, I know the guy's kind of not, he's not sophisticated that way, so. And he also had plenty to drink and was probably not on his game either, right? So
Right,
yes,
right. Yeah,
long
yeah.
long answer to your question. Yeah, that was definitely part of the thing there. I just wasn't at that level where I was involved in a lot of that.
Okay, okay. And how about Banya? Did you do that?
I didn't get
This.
to. I wish I had. Boy,
All right. Okay. Okay.
yep. If that was going to happen, it would have happened in Chelyabinsk, probably more likely. But no, it did not
Right.
get.
Yeah. So let's move to Chelyabinsk. How did you get involved there? Was it a continuation of this consulting gig, or what happened?
Yeah, it was still working for the same company. They had another project that because they were touting their expertise with this westernization of Russian steel plants. And so, if I remember right, um,
But let me just stop you for a second. You say their expertise in westernization of the steel plants, but were they really westernizing the steel plants? No,
no,
they were
itself,
examining. Yeah,
yeah,
okay. Yeah,
that was
okay.
that was what we were going to do. We were going to be the McKinsey Company of this sort of world,
Right.
and this was early on of trying to do this, right? So I'm sure Magnitogorsk contract helped sell getting some other work to do this sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it was Metro, Glencore, which owned that steel plant in Chelyabinsk, and then it was Metro trying to buy it. So, and I looked it up again today, and the dates seem kind of wrong, but there was a handover there, and there was also some money involved with like, well, in the purchase, what are we buying? They say if we had better rolling mills of a certain type, we could sell better steel, we could sell into the auto industry or white goods or whatever. The quality would be there. We just need some money to do this, like $300 million or something. So it's very sort of focused on upgrade kind of things. But then our EAF has to be improved, or our
What's an
BOF,
EAF? What EAF? What's that?
sorry, electric arc furnace. So
Okay. Yeah.
like old school, and it still exists in Russia somewhere, is open hearth furnace, which is kind of what you can imagine, right? It's just open thing. You just melt steel in it. And then there's a basic oxygen furnace where you're injecting oxygen into it to help the melt, and it's way more than that. And then electric arc furnace is you've got big electrodes that are coming down into a crucible and turning on the power, and then that welding rods, what they really are, this big around, are just melting the steel melt that you have in there. So I mean, they're like, yeah, they might need this specific equipment they're asking for, but then they're asking for some other upgrades too that help get the right steel for that. There's never just one thing. So it's very more technical. Felt like my memory is more technical work going on there for that.
And who hired your company for that?
Um, Metro hired us.
Mitchell.
Yeah.
Okay. Describe who Mitchell is a little bit.
Um, well, Metro, and I'm still kind of, I wasn't confused at the time, but again, I was looking it up, and Metro, it says Metro bought from Glencore, which is a Swiss trading company,
Right.
bought in 2002. Well, I wasn't even there in 2002, and I have calendars and things with Metro all over it. So like Metro was already there, and this is Alexei, what's his name? I got it over here. What was his last name? Well, I lost it. But the guy who was running it um for Glencore, then he ran it when it was sort of in between, and then he ran it afterwards. He made a transition from Glencore, and it always felt like he was, and I think from my interpreters, he was kind of like bad news. Like he was like the real deal of, this was not, this guy's background was probably iffy. Like he didn't want to mess with him.
Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
And
Yeah.
like that might have been partly too that they just were trying to buy this and they don't like that guy, and so there was bad blood or something. But I don't know. It was just a whole different feel there than it was at the Magnitogorsk project.
And he was this guy you're referring to was the general director.
No, he was the CEO of the whole.
Okay.
As you know, there's like 72,000 people in a complex of the town, right? They're running the whole city, really.
Right. Right. And so were you doing the same thing, kind of coming in 2 or 3 weeks at a time
Yep, yep,
and extracting information?
yep. Trying to just put some clarity to what the numbers are and make sure that we understood, and to help our technical people turn they're like, oh, their melt's wrong. They got to do this. So what's that cost? So I'm sort of costing out the different alloys and stuff. And so they're never going to make that steel price because their input costs are too high, and sort of doing the whole economic part of it as well. But that always ties into the technical part too.
Uh-huh.
Bridging
So
that.
in terms of actually doing your job, was it a little easier because you'd already done this at Magnitogorsk? I mean, you knew where some of the pitfalls were and some of the conceptual gaps were. Did you did you feel
Yeah,
like that? Yeah.
I did. I think part two though, it was like, oh, there's less sort of me spinning my wheels, like what? It's a whole new world. And you kind of have to get used to how to work in that world with an interpreter and asking smarter questions and things like that. Because I remember I'd come out of some meetings originally, I'd ask a bunch of questions, I'd get back to my little space to like do some work. I didn't learn anything. Like what, now I asked a question, I got some answers, but I don't know any more than I did before. I got to be smarter about it. I got to find a.
Yeah.
So I think I was learning those kind of things over time. Like, what are the holes that I keep ending up with? Let's start with those and see if I can dig there first. And so, I just got smarter about it. I'm not sure I got very good ever, but I got
Right.
probably good.
Right. Well, do you remember any particular conceptual problems that led to some of those holes? I mean, you talked about depreciation and amortization. Were there other things that were so different that they caused there to be difficulty in understanding?
Not really. The depreciation thing was sort of an accounting concept that's foreign to them. I think the rest of it is, I mean, they ran these things um, technically really well. I feel like they did the best that I think they did better than we would be able to do with what they were dealing with, and like the quality of their stuff was great given what they were working with, and that
Uh-huh.
takes
Uh-huh.
brilliance to do. I think and they had to keep track of things. They just didn't. The costs weren't as important. So
Okay.
the amounts were important, but the costs probably weren't as important. So, and I'm
Okay.
sure they kept track of them, but then it wasn't like we got to get better at the cost next year. There wasn't that meeting. I mean, I'm
Uh-huh.
winging it here, but I feel like that was probably because that's you do what you're pressured to do, right? So if they just care about me hitting my numbers and how I get there, they don't care about. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that really
Right.
well.
Yeah, yeah. I just, when I hear you say that, it seems to me that's a remnant of the command economy where there were targets set and the whole goal was to reach the targets, but the inputs were just given to you by some central planning agency and you didn't have to do that kind of accounting.
True,
Um,
exactly. They
so,
didn't have. You're right. The whole somebody else was handling that. They're like, you got to do this much, and here's what you get to do it with.
yeah,
Go exactly right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and were they at that point concerned about well, you said this, but the product mix and the where they were going with technology of steel making, um, and being
Well,
able to make a different quality of steel, maybe to export? What, was that part of what they were going through as a transition?
yeah, I'm sure they knew if they didn't change, they were not going to survive because even their internal customers were like not necessarily coming to them anymore. Like they were getting it from the open market somewhere else outside of Russia, where they could get it maybe cheaper and better. Oh my God,
Yeah,
we're going to disappear if we don't get this figured out. So they were wisely looking for help. They were like, our government's not going to give us a new rolling mill. That's not happening anymore.
right.
We've got to find a way to get that, and we know we need it.
Right. So again, the first one, and it was clear you were working for EBRD to determine whether money should be loaned to Magnitogorsk Steel. But in this case, you were working for Michelle and to determine whether money should be invested,
Yeah,
or is that right?
I look at it like because I've done a lot of that work since then. It's like anytime a company's buying a company, they want to find everything they can out about it to make
Right.
wise investment. Like is the equipment there just on its last legs, or are we buying crap?
Right.
Metro obviously was pretty educated about a lot of that, but not the next level of detail. Like what are we going to have to invest in this thing down the road to go where we want to go, right? What's the
Right.
state of affairs there?
Uh-huh.
And if
Uh-huh.
it's too bad, they might walk away from it, right? Or
Yeah.
it influence how much they're going to pay. Both
I
ways.
see. I see. I see. And they wanted a Western consultancy to make that evaluation for them, right?
Yeah, and mostly because of our, Hatch's steel making prowess and expertise as engineers. Like they're world class, like one of the, very highly esteemed in that. So that's why they could get their foot in the door to do this kind of work.
Yeah.
We know what it takes to make that cold rolled, from melt to, in a coil. So we can look at your stuff and go, here's where you're lacking, and here's what we think it will cost, et cetera, et cetera.
I see. Okay. And so the actual transformation was done by Michelle after acquiring the mill, whatever
Yeah.
that transformation was. But they didn't ask you to oversee that. They just were, this is a report that's a roadmap or a
Yeah.
forensic accounting of some kind, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It's like due diligence, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now maybe, once I was gone, maybe they did go, okay, now help us do that.
Right.
I'm sure
Right.
that was part of our sell too. We'll give you the roadmap, and then we're also your experts to help you execute this
Uh-huh.
transformation.
Yeah, yeah. And so, was it your same drill? You would fly to Moscow and then fly from Moscow to Chelyabinsk and stay in a hotel and for 2 or 3 weeks and out again? Was it the same drill?
It was the same drill. Yep.
Yeah.
And the hotels were like, I can't tell one from the other. It was like a very similar situation. I have a lot more memories from Chelyabinsk. Partly probably because the woman who ran the group of women who were the interpreters, she she traveled the world. She was very worldly, and we became pretty good friends. And so she was always like going to help me on any adventure that I could dream up. Like, hey, I want to go into town and find a pool hall or something. Oh yeah, okay, I'll give you this driver, and she helped make all those,
Uh-huh.
and also helped me. Like I think I told you some stories about where I definitely was running into some mafia types, and they wanted me to play pool with them, and they got me so drunk, and somehow I ended up back in my, apartment, and I couldn't have told anybody how to get there. I couldn't even have said the address or whatever, and my bill had been paid and change and the receipt back in there, and she's like, "Well, the mafia took you there. They know where you live. They just can't
Yeah.
figure. They're like, what are you? They don't know what's going on with you because no one's done this before. Like you're here doing this work, they know you're there supposed to be doing that, but then you're out here doing all this stuff. They're like, what's going on with this guy? So
Yeah. Oh, okay.
very
So
helpful.
that was their way of checking you out.
Yes, I mean I don't know if it happened on purpose that those guys were there, but I
Yeah.
mean
Uh-huh.
probably these drivers are probably tasked with like telling these guys stuff, right? Like, well, I got a guy going
Right.
down whatever. I mean, the drivers were good guys, but they're gonna make some money too, however they can. So they're probably I don't know if it's a coincidence, but these two guys are playing pool, and I learned Russian pool for a while till I forgot
Yeah.
it, and somehow they got me back there. And she's like, "Yeah, you're not an unknown quantity here. They just don't know what you're up to." And those guys actually accused me. It was all fun and games until one time they like got very serious and went, "You're a Russian. You're Ruski." I'm like, "Oh no, yes, Slavic." They were like pointing at my face. They were like, "No, you're not an American." So I remember that now. They were like, it got to a point they're like, "Game's over. You're being
Yeah.
careful with." And I was like, "Oh wait, no, American."
Yeah. They couldn't tell from the way you talked. Um, yeah.
I just, I don't know. They said I was Russian and I looked Slavic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true at all, but definitely like gonna see if what I did with that little interrogation. It only lasted for like a minute or so,
Right. 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 And was that part of the pool hall
but
adventure?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And what was your impression of that as a city, as an environment, the Chelyabinsk?
I mean, I thought it was wonderful. I mean, I'm not like a club goer and things like that. I'm like looking, like Buffalo is one of my favorite cities. I like that sort of grit and industrial and that sort of thing. And the whole city felt like that. Everything's kind of brown and gray.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and you can get a beer at a little kiosk thing here and walk around with it and drink it on the street. That's right up my alley. You know, it was like it was just it was just like a being on another planet for me where I also like not knowing a language and being like an outlier, like not being like being unusual that I'm in that space. Like Korea was that way for me in some places we went. So I was in my element there. Didn't know that was my element till I got this role, but I'm like, wow, I do love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that was also the place where people pulled you to their apartment because you were a stranger and they wanted to have a chance to talk to an American, right?
Yes, yes, that was
Yeah,
Jaya. Yep.
yeah, yeah,
I remember
yeah.
telling Vera about that. She goes, "Oh yeah, good. I'm glad you did that." I go, "Well, of course I'm doing that." She goes, "Well, Bill and Bob would not have done that. They would not go to
Right,
some."
right, right. So you were an oddball in terms of your own team, right? Your team members didn't do that.
Yeah, in fact, well, my very first trip to Magnitogorsk, I remember, like I think I told you, I saw where the tram was going and stuff, and I'm
Right.
like getting my bearings, and I probably had looked at a map ahead of time, although no, because it wasn't necessarily on the maps then. But I remember going confidently. It was in the winter because there was snow everywhere. We probably got there about 7 to our hotel, and we all went inside. We'd eaten somewhere or something beforehand. We went inside, and I'm like, "Well, I got nothing to do here. I'm gonna go back, at least go downstairs and stand outside and look around." And I was like, "Well, there's the tram stop, and I know that ways to the city." So I went and got on the tram, headed into town. Now it's probably like 9 o'clock or something, and just walked around. I don't remember, like, I don't think I got inside a place. Maybe there was like a little store that, well, it was 9 o'clock at night. There was nothing going on. I was just walking
Yeah,
around, but I didn't get back till like midnight. And, but I found my way back. I mean, I knew I would, but it was not a given. I had to figure out which tram to get on and stuff like that. And I'm walking back the couple blocks to the hotel, and there's a crowd of people out front. I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm walking up there. Oh, they're in. I'm like, they were looking for me.
oh, 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 okay.
They
Right.
they had, they had some of the meeting of us after we all got settled in our rooms, and they like went around. Let's go get together and talk about something. I wasn't in my room. Oh, where's Kent? And they probably went down and talked to the doorman, and he was like, "Well, he went down there. Oh my god!" And so they thought something happened to me. It was too
Yeah.
dangerous to be out there alone at night.
Right. Right.
Thinking, what? Maybe it was, but it wasn't to me. So that was
Yeah.
my. They thought I was crazy from the start.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
what? We've been here like 10 times already, and no one's ever left this place. What are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. This is before the cell phone era, right?
Yep.
So
Oh,
so
yeah,
you didn't have you had nothing. You were just on your own.
I was
Yeah.
on my own. Yeah,
Yeah.
which would have preferred it that way. But yeah, I'm glad it was because it was like
Yeah.
you got to figure it out. It's like I don't mind you got to have your wits about you and figure out a way to get back.
Did some of the other members of your team in either city hate being there and express that?
Yeah,
Or
they
yeah.
did. It was
What
like
is it? What was that about? Why did they dislike it?
they're just used to the comforts of home, I guess, right? I mean,
Uh-huh.
it's like I traveled with many people who don't even like, if they have to go to Italy, they're going to look for TGI Friday to eat at when they're there.
Uh-huh.
You
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
and it just no, there was nothing. I mean, there is nothing to do there in the traditional sense. So if you don't get any joy out of just exploring, then it's going to be total downtime for you, misery. I'd rather be back home with my kids and wife or whatever. I mean, I kind of get that, but they took no joy in being in a strange place and just learning about it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It was
Uh-huh.
too,
Yeah.
there was one guy from Canada, Bob, who was a young kid. He was a little younger than me. He had a little adventuresome spirit in him. He and I got into a few little things and explored around a few times. So, but other than that, no. They just want to get out of there as soon as possible. And then so they did,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they fulfilled their job. They got out of they hung at the hotel and left when they
right.
could.
They
Yeah,
spent 3 days or whatever and then bolted. And
right,
I'm sure
right.
they wouldn't have taken the jobs on if they had to stay longer. None of them would
Yeah,
have done 2 weeks at a time like I was doing, or 3 weeks ever. And I
ever.
had a wife and kids and brand new babies and stuff, but
Right, right, right. And so they didn't know anything about Russia. None of you guys did, really.
no.
You knew about steel and you knew about metallurgy and you knew about business practices. And you were just plopped down in this alien cultural environment.
Exactly, which
Yeah.
was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, do you think how do you think that experience changed you? Or did it?
I wouldn't say it changed me. It just let me know about myself because I
Mhm.
didn't know necessarily. I mean, if I look back, I'm always adventuresome or whatever, but this was to the extreme. And instead of like being a little bit from it, I like embraced it. I couldn't help myself, right? So I
Right.
learned that about myself that I really enjoy that. Like if I had a choice
Uh-huh.
between going to say someplace I've been before or someplace I haven't, I'm going to the place I haven't. Where I know a lot of people would be like, no, that's like I have a brother who's like, no, I want to go to a Hyatt each time because I know the alarm clocks are the same and I don't have to mess with how to figure it out and I won't worry
Right.
about all that stuff. And I like the opposite. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I want a new experience each time.
Right. 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 And as far as changing them, you were part of a change they were going through. You were an observer of that change, right? Not
Right.
really an agent of that change, as I can tell, right? Is that fair?
It's
Yeah.
fair. I think kind of back to what I said earlier, it's sort of like, well, somebody had to be there involved in this chipping away at, you know, new experiences for them to get more westernized. Any one person or activity was just a drop in the bucket, right? But I think it all adds up. Like I think, I mean, just my relationships with these people at the steel plants and in the business units were like, oh, they got one of the Americans that they met was like engaging and real, and yeah, we would hung out with him. He'd have been a friend of ours here. I think that's
Yeah. 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 And you haven't kept touch with anybody since then.
Vera, the head interpreter for years. I had like she even came to America once and brought gifts for my kids and trapped. So
Wow.
she was like a granddaughter of the founder of the steel plant or something. Like they had money,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
privilege that all the other women in there didn't have at all. And
Uh-huh.
came to the States and I saw her here. And so, once a year we text or email back and forth. And then, when Putin invaded Ukraine, I I texted her something and she totally had been like indoctrinated. It like actually scared me because I'm like, of all the people, you've traveled the world and
Right.
you've read all these books in English and like, and she totally was like brainwashed. And I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
so I just didn't even respond. So it's been
Yeah.
sitting in the back of my head like I still would like to reach out sometime, but it's almost like scary. I'm like, wow, look how that can happen to people.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Didn't want to argue with her about it because she was so convinced, right?
Right. 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 Probably wouldn't have changed her mind by arguing. No.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. And so how long was the Chelyabinsk assignment? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, let's say a year.
Yeah. Oh, that's a pretty long assignment.
Right. So I probably had, you know, 6 or 7 or 8 trips there. Like I could
Yeah.
find out in my passport, I guess. But you
Right.
know, sometimes there were longer gaps. It might be a month and a half there. Like it just stretched out over that long of time. And I was never away for too long that it was all brand new again, like different people
Right.
there.
Right. 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 And so you contributed to a report that was given to the client. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ultimately, there was always some big stack of something, and I wasn't even the author of that. I remember Rick on one of these. I think Magnitogorsk. It's his job to put it all together. He was sort of the lead guy. He was a technical guy, but he was also pretty savvy business. So he was, I fed him my stuff.
Uh-huh. 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 Interesting. Okay. Well, have I missed things that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, they would just be, crazy stories, and some probably better left unsaid. But well, it's just I was like before we had this call, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to run off at the mouth and talk about things that I shouldn't, because I mean, I was out there exploring the world and got into some scary situations sometimes, like, or even just things like, you know, these stories would give people a sense of what it was like there. Like I remember driver taking me to a place again, nondescript door, walk down about 3 steps. Here's a young guy in a leather jacket. There's a little bar, probably the size of a caboose, not a big thing at all. Really pretty girl standing there as like the hostess, and like no one there. Little bartender. Now just me. And I walk down there, and the guy at the door like opens his jacket up and shows me his gun, his pistol sitting in here. Didn't say
Yeah.
where. Like I'm security.
Right. Right.
Those sort of things were like new to me. It's like wow. And even scouting around in Moscow the few times that I got to do that, going and coming, I would get off the beaten path. And Moscow's a big city, like New York City. You can get in the wrong areas easily.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to run into trouble and maybe have to like skedaddle, and run
Right.
down and find your way back somewhere. So I mean, I was out there. I guess people say pushing my luck, but I'm just out there exploring. I'm not trying to cause trouble, right?
Yeah. 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 Well, you certainly had a unique experience, in not only as an American going to Russia, but where you went and the kind of processes that you were involved in, and the window that you had into that industrial world. Um,
Absolutely.
Many of the people I've interviewed who've been lived in Moscow, they maybe were there for years, but didn't have that same exposure in the provinces to the industrial world. So it's a really, I think it's a unique, and that's really why I wanted to talk to you about it. And I don't know, I've again, if there's anything else you want to add about this and its significance to you, or anything like that, then we should go there. And if not, I think we probably pretty much covered it, right?
I guess I would just say, and it's cliche, but it's true. It's like, people get like wound up, in wars about, those people or whatever. People are good everywhere, right?
Uh-huh.
It's governments get crazy, but the people, if you're hanging with they're the same people. We're the same everywhere, and it's just nice to reinforce that and go out there and experience it. And just they also now know the same thing that I know, that hey, we're all out here just trying to make it, trying to be good to each other. Um, yeah, so I
Yeah.
guess that would be it.
That's a good message. It's and one, it's simple, but it's one that's easily forgotten, I think, in today's world, right?
I
So
agree.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you being willing to share all this with me.